right. Give that a minute to spool up. I think it should show us live on Facebook. Oh yeah, there we are. All right. I think we are live now.
Okay, I see you guys.
Peter, there's Nick, yeah, Dr. Nick. All right. Well, welcome everybody. As you may notice, we're in a little bit different setting this time. We're trying a different production approach. So forgive us as we kind of work out some of the kinks. We're actually a little late, admittedly, as we're working through some of the challenges of live streaming. But we've got Dr. Nick, obviously, with us. So welcome, Dr. Nick. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me again.
Yep. As always, I have my friend Patrick here from the Coral Farm.
Hello.
So hopefully the audio levels are okay. Hopefully everything's doing good. I think I'm getting thumbs up from Zach. Zach says thumbs up. So welcome everybody. This is our live Q&A we do every other week, every Wednesday at 1 p.m. typically, CST. So we've got some questions today that have been submitted to us on our website. If you're not too sure how to do that, you can go to LiveAquaria.com website, and there's actually a banner a little bit further down on the home page where you can submit your question, and then we'll answer them hopefully live here on stream. As always, we are taking questions live as well in the chat, so if you have any questions you'd like to go over or any answers you may need about your aquarium keeping experience, we got Patrick, we got Dr. Nick here at your disposal. So thank you everybody. We got Sheila, Donald, Christopher, Mohammed. Welcome everybody. All right, so I think we're ready to get started. This first question is from James. Was wondering what kind of plants I can keep in a brackish tank. Dr. Nick, I'll let you take that one.
Okay, yeah, so brackish means the salinity is not quite freshwater, not quite seawater. It's usually associated with estuaries where rivers are running into ocean and you get a blend of the water. And so there are some plants that will live in those types of environments. The most common one you will see around in areas like Florida in those brackish waters would be mangroves, but also the different types of trees that you can put in to larger aquariums, the little mangrove little shoots and things like that. But if you're talking about aquarium plants, the majority of aquarium plants that we sell at the freshwater aquarium stores are not salt tolerant, and so those won't do well. There might be some of the macroalgae that are a little tolerant to lower salinity levels that you could try too, like some of the clerpas have sometimes been grown in lower salinity water. So that's a possibility that you could try. But for the freshwater plants, the ones that might be a little more tolerant are Anubias, and we talked a lot about Anubias previously because it's a pretty hardy, sturdy, dense plant. And Anubias, Java fern, Java moss, sometimes the Anacris, although that's a little softer plant. The Marimo balls and moneywort are a couple plants that have a wider range of salt tolerance. You will it'd be best if you're already having those plants in fresh water to gradually increase the salinity up to where you want it to be for your brackish water fish and see how they do. If they start wilting, you may not be able to go any higher salinity level than where you are. But those would be some to try out.
Awesome. Hey, Patrick, anything from your end?
Yeah, I mean, when I hear the word brackish, it's kind of a loose term. It's thrown around there. Generally speaking, brackish water fish are probably about, if it's talking specific gravity, 1.008 to 1.012. Most freshwater plants will not tolerate that. like Dr. Nick said, if you're gradually increasing the salt level with some of the hardy varieties that he mentioned, you might be able to get up to 1.005, but that's over a long period of time. So a lot of people like to add aquarium salt to their tank. So the species that Dr. Nick mentioned will do well at the recommended dose if you gradually increase it. But a lot of plants won't tolerate any salt at all.
Awesome. Thank you both. I see we actually had some stars from Christopher, so thank you so much for those stars. Greatly appreciate that. This next question from Kara. Kara asks, I've had a 35-gallon saltwater aquarium. It has a Fluval 305 canister filter up for over a year now, but really didn't get it cycled properly at the beginning. I've had constant battle with ammonia, nitrate, and phosphate. Nitrate is usually good. Usually the pH is stable at 8.2. Every so often it'll fall to 7.8. I'm in the process of setting up a 75-gallon. It will have a trigger system sump, skimmer refugium, more live rock. I'm excited because I understand that a sump will make it easier to keep the water parameters stable. My question is, what is the best way to cycle the tank correctly and more quickly so I can get my fish moved to their new home? Oh, a lot of information there. Patrick, what do you say?
Well, first off, the pH fluctuation is pretty normal. I wouldn't really worry about a 7.8 to 8.2 fluctuation very much. I mean, that's normal. As for that size aquarium, a 35-gallon is a pretty small aquarium for saltwater. So having an ammonia and nitrate fluctuation.
Yep. As you said, ammonia, nitrate, and phosphate.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty common in smaller aquariums. If you have a heavy bio load, messy fish, you're overfeeding. A lot of people will try to compensate with doing larger water changes. That can actually make things worse because then you're removing a lot of nitrifying bacteria. So in a small aquarium like that, with those problems, messy eaters, overfeeding, large water changes, there's not enough volume and biological media, most likely in the tank, to absorb the waste that's being produced. Moving to a larger aquarium is definitely the best thing to do. And to do that, I would definitely take all the water that you can, all the biological media, the live rock, all that stuff, and put that in the new aquarium, and then top off with new fresh salt mix. And that'll help get the tank seated. And then there's also additional products on the market that you can add to boost the nitrifying bacteria in the tank. That's pretty much summed it up.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. There's a lot of information there.
A lot of information, yeah.
Just trying to touch on all of it.
I like what Kara did there, providing a lot of information too, because I think, as a lot of people know, like, there's a lot of intricacies, a lot of details a lot of times with these aquariums. So as much detail as possible is always a good thing. So
yeah, and she mentioned she's going to do a bit bigger, better filter. So there'll be more surface area for the nitrifying bacteria to absorb that ammonia, convert it to nitrite, and then ultimately to nitrates. So
cool. Dr. Nick, anything from your end?
Yeah, I'll add 2 points on that. What Patrick just said about the bigger filter makes a real important difference. The bioload in the aquarium is easier to maintain in a larger aquarium than in a small aquarium, so going to the bigger tank will be helpful. But also make sure that the filtration capacity is large enough that it will be able to have surface area for the live bacteria to live and grow that will break down the ammonia to nitrite to nitrate. And that will help to reduce the ammonia and the nitrite problems that Kara was having. Then one other thing I'd like to bring up, she'd mentioned about to cycle her aquarium correctly and quickly. There are some products you can buy commercially. I know Dr. Tim's Medications has some to do what's called a fishless cycle, where you're putting in an ammonia supplement into the water that will allow the bacteria to grow and start building up before you ever put the fish in. And then you monitor the ammonia and the nitrite and nitrate levels, and when you see the cycle has occurred, you can then add the fish. And by adding these products into the aquarium and checking your water quality, you can get it to cycle faster and safely without any injury to the fish, because there'll be no fish in it initially. And then add the fish once you see the cycle has finished. Now, one caution on that is once you start adding the fish, that's going to increase the bioload. So even though the tank has been cycled, you still want to add fish slowly over time, a few at a time, over a period of several weeks, so that as new fish or new invertebrates or corals, whatever you're adding, is put into the aquarium, the biofilter has a chance to grow. It's a very slow growing bacteria. You know, unfortunately, all the bad bacteria that cause infections grow very rapidly, and the good bacteria, the heterotrophic, autotrophic, and nitrifying bacteria that we need in the aquarium, are not fast growing. So we have to be patient when setting up those new aquariums.
Awesome. All right. Next question is from, I hope I'm not butchering this, Claisha. I'm cycling my first 75-gallon aquarium, getting ready for fishes. I want Corydoras, but have gravel substrate. Is this okay? Patrick.
So Corydora catfish are bottom-dwelling fish. They have a flat bottom, so they hug the substrate really close. So it's really important to make sure that you use a soft, fine subs for them to hang out on. Yeah, so if you use anything that's really jagged or sharp, it can actually irritate their stomachs, and that could cause infection. So gravel is okay, but you want to make sure that it's round, it's smooth, and it's on the smaller side. That way they can kind of dig through it pretty easy. You know, if it's really big gravel, they might not be able to push it around and actively scavenge in the tank and kind of serve their purpose that a lot of people like them for, you know, to be a bottom-dwelling fish. That's pretty much it.
Cool. All right, moving along then to a Generva. What type of fish will clean my fish tank? I have a 30-gallon tank. I have a goldfish, and that's like 7 years old. I also have some glowfish in there. I ordered cherry shrimp. I didn't know what they were going to send me, so I tried to keep them separate in a little container that I had and ordered an incubator for them. But before it got to me, all the shrimp died, and what I had in there was a plastic little bucket that I put little holes in. But I guess they weren't getting enough fresh water, and I was scared to let them loose in the tank within the goldfish, or with the goldfish in there. So a lot going on there. So I guess they're really just looking for recommendations on what fish will clean their tank in a 30-gallon freshwater. Dr. Nick, I'll let you take that one.
Okay, yeah, and Patrick had made a note on here about goldfish and tropical fish not necessarily, you know, being compatible, because goldfish are, number one, they're messy, they get pretty big. Most people don't realize how large they can actually grow because you know, you're seeing the tiny little goldfish at the pet store, 1 inch, 2 inch, 3 inches long. They can get up to 12 inches, some is even as big as 16 inches. So goldfish can get pretty big, and they do require a larger tank and a higher level of filtration than the typical fish. So a lot of people don't recommend putting goldfish in with tropical fish. They're also cool water fish, meaning that they prefer temperatures in the 60s to 70 rather than tropical fish, which prefer 72 to 80 or even 82 degrees. Now, despite that, a lot of goldfish will do fine in aquariums with other fish, but you have to take into account their size and how big they'll get. So with thinking about that, goldfish are opportunistic eaters. They will eat anything that will kind of fit in their mouth, and they just sort of suck it up. So that would probably take care of the cherry shrimp pretty rapidly. Not that they're aggressive, but they'll just eat anything that they can find and catch. So the glowfish are probably okay as far as with cherry shrimp goes, but cherry shrimp are really small and do best either by themselves or with other aquarium habitants like tiny, smaller tetras, rasboras, maybe some stanios, neon tetras, zebradanios, galaxy rasboras, smaller fish like that would be okay with them. Okay, so probably in that tank, the cherry shrimp aren't good. You can find some Amano shrimp, and they do get quite a bit larger than cherry shrimp, and you could, get some Amano shrimp in there, assuming that the goldfish aren't too big. They might be okay. Some of the other fish to look into would be the algae eaters, the Siamese algae eater, Chinese algae eaters. Those have been reported, and I've actually seen this happen, where some of the bigger Chinese algae eaters will get onto the sides of slower moving fish, particularly fancy goldfish, and will start sucking the slime coat off of the goldfish. And I've seen that actually happen before. So that's just another concern about mixing some of these fish together. And if you're looking at just algae, I would probably say Plecostomus. And remember, the common Plecostomus, which is usually the least expensive one, is about an 18-inch fish full grown. And so unless you have a really big tank, you do not want to get those. But the rubber lip plecos and the bristle nose plecos only get about 4 or 5 inches long full grown, and they're actually really good for smaller tanks. So that's what I would suggest as far as helping to clean your tank. If it's specifically algae, the Plecostomus would work. If you're just looking at some bottom feeders, Corydoras are probably your best bet on that. And they're actually cooler weather, water temperature tolerant as well. So those would go along with your goldfish.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Real quick, I just want to break here. Unless you had anything else, Patrick?
No, yeah, I wanted to point out that a lot of people like to put snails in with goldfish too. There's a lot of cool water snails that will do well, but they are regulated quite a bit from state to state because if they were to get released, they can actually thrive in the wild. But goldfish are pretty good scavengers themselves. Like Dr. Nick said, they're opportunistic. They're always foraging for food on the bottom. So generally bottom-dwelling fish, you don't really need to add any, because they are such good scavengers. They'll dig their noses right into this gravel looking for food and whatnot. So
awesome. We got evening guys from Jake. Welcome, Jake. And what I was going to say is I just want to appreciate everybody for tuning in today. This is our live Q&A where we do this every other week on Wednesday at 1 p.m. CST. We're a little late today because we're working through a new production setup, but we'll definitely be continuing to improve it as we go on here. All these questions today were from our website, or submitted from our website. So if you have any questions about aquarium keeping you'd like answered by us, it's Patrick and Dr. Nick, you can head over to liveaquaria.com, scroll down on the homepage, and there's a banner for where you can submit your question, essentially, and we'll add it to our list. So the next question from that submission form was from a Heather, and I'll let Patrick take this one. Should a sump be cleaned every 6 months?
yes, in a perfect world, sump should be cleaned very often. Just because that's tend to where all the organic debris will accumulate, and then that organic debris will tend to break down into phosphates and nitrogen. And then the algae in the tank will use that as a food source. So it's kind of an easy way to remove that accumulated nutrients in your tank. Because usually for the most part, sumps are easy to access. You can go in there and siphon out the bottom really quickly, and it usually doesn't take more than 15 minutes or so. So once a month would be great, but definitely at least every 6 months.
Okay. Dr. Nick, anything you'd like to add to that?
I totally agree with Patrick. And I wanted to make a comment. A lot of the questions that we've had over the past couple of months here relate to algae and water quality, which goes back to the nitrogen cycle and the nitrite and nitrate and phosphate that accumulate. So if you have a chance, go back and look at some of the old broadcasts where we've talked about those, because we've kind of hit that topic fairly frequently. The second part that correlates with what Patrick said here is getting that particulate matter out of the tank helps to improve the water quality. However, there are some products available, and again, I mentioned Dr. Tim's products, but also Microbe Lift has some products that are bacterial supplements that are not the nitrifying the bacteria, but heterotrophic bacteria that actually break down solid waste and cause it to the waste products to become solutions into the water. Now, that doesn't help because the waste is still in the water, except if you're doing water changes. And there are some products that if you have a lot of debris, a lot of sediment in the bottom of your aquarium gravel, and maybe it's a planted tank and you can't get in there with a gravel vacuum and suck it out very well, that adding some of these other bacteria supplements will help break that down and clean it out into dissolved compounds in the water, which then you can remove through water changes. So you still have to do the water change, but some of these supplements can be added to help make the tank cleaning easier by doing more water changes and less gravel vacuuming.
Awesome. All right, next question is from Delaney. Delaney's wondering, how long should we wait after you cycle a new saltwater tank to add coral or fish? I think this is another question we've gotten a few times. I'll let you take that, Patrick.
So it's mostly about coral, right?
Yeah, it looks like coral and fish.
Okay. All right. Well, when you set up a saltwater tank, I hope you have a stocking guide or a stocking list in mind, because you want to make sure that you add fish in a certain order, and corals are going to come afterward, just because corals are less forgiving when it comes to water quality fluctuations and whatnot. Fish are a little bit more hardy. But after you cycle it, you get some fish in there and you feel like your biological filter is mature. You don't see any water quality fluctuations. Your ammonia is zero, your nitrite are zero. I would say it's a good sign that it's to start adding some new coral, some hardy soft coral. LPS, SPS, those are a little bit more tricky. Those you want to wait on for probably a good 4 to 6 months.
Okay. Dr. Nick, anything from your end?
No, I think that answers it. And we did have a similar question from Wyatt, that how do I know when it's appropriate time to add coral? And I think Patrick's answer there will answer his question as well.
Yeah. Great. Well, here's another question from Wyatt, actually. What's the best way to keep green hair algae out of your marine tank? I would say this is probably also aligned with some of the other things we got, but Dr. Nick, I'll let you take this one.
Okay. So, you know, we've see algae, actually a couple of even other questions today. Algae is really common in aquariums that have a high nutrient load. If you think about when you go to the plant store, the nursery, they're selling you fertilizer. And what is fertilizer? The fertilizer you buy is nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. And potassium's not a big component in fresh water. We do see a little bit in marine aquariums, but not really a big deal. But we sure have a lot of nitrate and phosphate in marine and freshwater aquariums. So we're loading aquariums with natural plant fertilizers. And that's just from the biological process of the fish. And so we're going to see large amounts of algae growing in both freshwater and marine aquariums unless we can keep that level of ammonia, nitrite, nitrate, and phosphate down. The best way of doing that is having a good biological filtration, which converts ammonia to nitrite and then from nitrite to nitrate. But you'll still get the nitrate and the phosphate accumulating in the water. I would recommend you get a test kit, either test strips or a water, the little vials that you put the water in and test the water and measure your nitrate and phosphate levels. If you see that they're elevated, you're going to start getting algae because that acts as a fertilizer. So you'll need to do maintenance to keep the particulate waste out. We've been talking about that already, and cleaning the sump and adding new biological additives to break down the solid waste. and then do water changes to remove the nitrate and phosphate that will accumulate. There's really no good way of getting rid of that. There are some filters you can buy that are either like filter pads impregnated with chemicals that you put those into your filter, and as the water goes through, the chemicals will attach to the nitrate or to the phosphate or ammonia. And those are great if you need to use those. But remember, they have a limited capacity. So eventually you have to take those out, throw them away, and put a new one in. But if that's something to consider, if that's your option, you don't have the ability to do more water changes. Perhaps you're in an area where you don't have access to sea salt mix, or it's hard to make up seawater to do frequent water changes on your aquarium. In that case, I would consider getting the phosphate filters that will help take that out of the water. Once you have a low level of nitrate and phosphate, the growth of algae will be reduced. Then the second component with algae is light. It depends on the type of algae. Some like high light, some like lower levels of light. If it's a green algae, that usually requires significant lighting. So it is possible to reduce the lighting on the tank. You might turn your the light switch down more, like a shorter period of light. Mine's on a timer, and I can adjust the timer. So if I see a lot of algae, I'll decrease the light. So reducing the lighting will help with that. And then the biological option is getting more things in your aquarium that eat algae. So depending on what kind of fish that you're having there, you might be able to add some shrimp or some crabs or some snails or something else that will help to eat the algae and help keep it down. So clean the water, clean the debris, biological filtration, chemical filtration using filter media that will absorb nitrate and phosphate and ammonia, and invertebrates or other fish that like to eat algae. Those are kind of your best options. A lot of options there.
Yeah, and I feel like it's a balance. I mean, you're going to probably touch on all of those to have the best results. Basically the best foundation is to have good water quality. Make sure the water you're adding to the tank doesn't have phosphates in it, because a lot of tap waters have high phosphates in it. So make sure you use good quality RO water to make sure all that stuff's been stripped from it. Make sure you use a good quality salt, because some salts have phosphates in them as well. And then, the biological part, like Dr. Nick talked about, really just the stuff that's being generated in the tank. Good quality food as well. Make sure all the food is eaten. Uneaten food is really bad too. Lighting, the spectrum, the color of the light, how long the light's on, the intensity, all that stuff. It's totally a balance. Yep.
Yeah, I guess just to kind of speak a little bit from my experience, one of the things that stood out to me when I first got into, I started with freshwater aquariums like a lot of people do, and it was that spectrum piece that really kind of surprised me a lot, just that color of that light making such a huge impact on the algae growth. So
for sure,
good stuff. All right, so last question here is from Deb. What's the most efficient and least messy way to clean my canister filter? I think I've got a couple of tips, but I'll start with Patrick.
Yeah, so I love canister filters. I mean, some people don't like them, but I like them. I think they're quiet. They hold a ton of media. They're nice and clean because you don't have an ugly power filter hanging off the back. But when it comes to cleaning them, it's a pain, because they're essentially a 5-gallon bucket full of water. So that's a good 30, 40 pounds of water. So, and they have to be on the floor because it works by gravity. I mean, the water's siphoned, filtered, then pumped back up. So it's on ground level, so you gotta go and dig in your stand, pull it out, lift it up, bring it to your sink, whatever. It's a lot of work. But I feel like the benefits really are pretty good. So I've had a lot of canister filters over the years, and I've found that the best way to maintain them, clean them, whatever, is I'll actually keep the canister filter in a bucket. and I'll turn the pump off, pull the hoses off, open up the cabinet doors, and I'll pull the whole bucket out, filter and all. Any spillage will fall in the bucket. You got a nice easy handle. You can bring it to the sink, bring it outside, whatever works. And then you can clean the media from there. For the most part, the chemical filtration is going to be tossed because, like Dr. Nick mentioned, that has a lifespan, 30 days at most. Sometimes you can regenerate that stuff, but if you're using it, most of the time you just toss it out. Mechanical filtration, you can rinse that off with dechlorinated water, aquarium water, whatever. For the most part, they have coarse pads you can reuse, put back in. Biological filtration, you're always going to want to reuse that. I wouldn't expose that to too much air. Try to keep it submerged with aquarium water. And you're going to put that right back in. And then probably the last tip is make sure you fill the canister filter completely with water. Keep in the bucket, bring it back to the tank, because when it's completely full, it's going to make the priming process way easier. If it's empty, you're going to lose your prime, and then it's going to turn into a gigantic mess and a headache.
Yeah. Well, I'll let Dr. Nick share some of his points too. I'm sure he's got some thoughts.
Yeah, okay. So canister filters, I agree with Patrick. That is the way to go on, anything larger than maybe a 20-gallon aquarium. You should, and even smaller ones, you could use a canister. But any big aquariums, canister filters are really the way to go, unless you have, a wet-dry filtration and a sump and all that set up. But canister filters work great. I have the luxury here in Phoenix of being able to take mine out on the back sidewalk behind my house on the cement patio and hose it off. And I just do it, I can do it year-round out there. If you up in Rhineland or Wisconsin, it might be a little bit chilly in the winter trying to do that, but I can do that. Yeah, I can do that here. And when I do that, there's a couple things to think about. So I take mine apart, I clean, using a 5-gallon bucket. I'll dump each of the chambers with their, the bio balls, the ceramic beads, the foam pad. Do those each one at a time, cleaning them out in the bucket, and then putting them back into their little compartment, and then reassembling it. So clean each of the components, put it back in. But I'm going to mention, if you're using chlorinated water, which I do with the garden hose, you can actually kill your biofiltration bacteria. So you have to keep that in mind. If the water is too hot, too cold, or has chlorine in it, you don't want to kill off all of your biofiltration bacteria. So one option would be to take some of the media, let's say the bio balls, which is one of the main components of the bacteria living on those, and just rinse them in some of the water that you've taken out of the aquarium when you're doing your water change. Just rinse it in that to get the particulate matter off and put that back in. So you're not aggressively cleaning them, and you're not using any chlorinated water to clean them, and your bacteria will do better that way, and you won't kill off all the bacteria by aggressive cleaning. But a lot of the things like the sponges get so thick with debris that you really have to rinse them and squeeze them and rinse them and squeeze them to get them to run clean again. And so you're going to probably lose bacteria on that, but you want to get that particulate matter out so it doesn't block up the flow of water through the sponge and cause channeling. Once you get all your components rinsed off, put them all back together. As Patrick said, refill it. And the nice thing about modern canister filters is they usually have a lever that you pull the lever and it disconnects the whole tubing part, so the tubing stays under your cabinet, and you can just take the filter out in the plastic bucket, put it back in, put the tubing back on, and then relatch it. So it makes it a lot easier to change this. And years ago when you had to unscrew each of the tubes, and then the water would spray out and drain and leak and all that kind of stuff.
Siphon out, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And then as a veterinarian, I have to warn people, don't do this in your kitchen sink. Preferably you have a laundry room sink, or you could do it outside like I do. But no matter where you do it, just be aware there are bacteria in aquatic environments that can cause illness in people. Anything from Mycobacterium to Salmonella to some of the even common things like Pseudomonas and Aeromonas. So if you're doing this in your bathtub or in your kitchen sink, be sure you disinfect it using some bleach or other disinfectant afterwards, the sink or the tub, so that you're not leaving aquarium water residue, in your sink. But ideally, do it in a laundry room sink or some other area where you're not putting food or people in the tub.
That's a good point.
Great point. Yeah, actually, really good point. Yeah, I know. I've always had a lot of the aquariums I've kept here at work, so we have, obviously dedicated washing bays and basins and things like that where this happens day in and day out. But I was going to say, I particularly like Patrick's recommendation about the bucket with the canister filter. I've owned so many canister filters, and it's like, why I never thought of that? It's just sort of like, I almost feel foolish now. I guess real quick, I'm just curious, if you guys had to have, what's your favorite canister filter, brand or otherwise? Patrick, what would be your best canister filter you've ever had?
I always was really happy with Fluval.
Mm-hmm.
The Marineland 350s were good too.
Yeah. What about you, Dr. Nick? Oh, looks like we lost Dr. Nick. Well, I know I
disappeared to go look at mine.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So I couldn't remember that. It's the HydroPure. But in the past, I've used Fluval, which is great. I've used Eheim. The things about them that I have found that are sometimes problematic is opening the top. So, because it's been under pressure and you have those latches that hold it on. So if you're out shopping for a canister filter, open it and open the latches and see how easy it is to take that top part off. Because sometimes I've had a real trouble getting them unlatched and separated. So you want one that's easy to open. And then the second thing I mentioned earlier is you want one where the tubes that come from the aquarium are attached to a block, and the block pops in and pops out, usually with a lever, so that you can disconnect it from the aquarium without water draining from your tank. So those are things to look for on whatever canister filter you're getting.
Yeah, definitely. I've had Eheim, I've ran a Cobalt. Actually, I tested a Cobalt at one point, but Fluval was a lot of what I've run for majority of aquarium keeping. I've always had a lot of good luck with them. I used to run a FX4 on it was overkill, but I think it was like a
good size filter,
50 gallon aquarium, 75 gallon aquarium. I can't remember exactly the gallon size, but it was overkill. But yeah, I like the features of it too. I think it had like a built-in gravel filter or gravel vac too.
Okay, yeah.
I feel like that's right. But anyway, definitely some good options out there, and it's a great option for all aquarium types. But I think that wraps up this live Q&A. Thanks everybody for joining us this week. Like I mentioned before, we do this every other week on Wednesday, typically at 1 p.m. CST. Welcome any and all questions. If you're curious about a problem you're having with your aquarium, keeping fish, dipping corals, algae maintenance, all that good stuff. We answer a lot of those kind of questions, but anything you might have is welcome. Even product recommendations too. We've got a lot of experience between Patrick and Dr. Nick of foods they've used, equipment they've used, lights they've used. So welcome any and all questions. So if you have any questions, head on over to LiveAquaria.com, scroll a little bit down on the home page. You'll find the banner there to submit your question, and we'll add it to our list. I think that with that being said, I want to thank Patrick for your time today. Dr. Nick, thank you for your time also.
You're welcome.
All right. Well, thank you all for joining us.
Thank you.
Have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you soon.